So if you're even remotely up to date with bike news, you'll know that Suzuki's got a new Hayabusa, the 3rd generation model. Now, it's not the ground up redesign overhaul that I think some people were hoping for, but it's about as big an update as you could do to a bike without calling it an all new model. And because the 2nd generation bike was so bare bones, the list of new features on this thing is immense. So let's take a look at some of the most important upgrades that they've made to this bike, and then we'll go for a spin. The first thing I'm sure you'll notice about the 3rd gen Hayabusa is the new styling package, which is very different compared to the bike it replaces, though it's still distinctly Hayabusa. So I think Suzuki's really hit the nail on the head with that. That styling package includes a new LED front end, some new wheels wrapped in Bridgestone S22 tyres, which are a really sticky road tyre. And that design finishes off with these lovely twin exhaust outlets, which I think really finish off the design of the bike. We've also got a properly sophisticated electronics suite in this bike for the first time, more on that a bit later. But all this comes at the price of $27,690 right away, which is an $8,200 premium compared to the bike it replaces. So let's go for a spin and see how these changes affect the bike in the real world. So it was quite controversial when Suzuki revealed this bike because it retains the 1340cc engine as the old ones did, although it's had a lot of updates. But what was most controversial was the fact that this bike's output figures are actually weaker than the bike before it. This one makes 140 kilowatts and 150 newton meters, which is 5 kilowatts and 5 newton meters less than the 2nd generation bike. But you've only got to take one look at the dyno graph to see what they've done. They've just bunged all the power in the mid-range, and it's clearly much better performance on the road. That's what makes a Hayabusa, I reckon. It's got, even after 30 years, this 1340cc engine is still so exhilarating. Just the way it delivers its power, it's like being shot out of a cannon. It's like, in the real world, you know, this thing would probably get blitzed by any 1000cc sports bike just because of the weight factor. You know, this thing weighs 264 kilograms wet, which is, you know, pretty hefty in this day and age. But I think you buy a Hayabusa because you want that very distinct feeling of acceleration, which honestly it never gets old. The only problem is you literally will lose your license in about 3 seconds from a standstill. But oh well. So we've got, yeah, really sophisticated electronics suite in this bike now. The old bike didn't even have traction control. So now we've got power mode adjustment, traction control that can be toggled in 10 levels, cornering ABS, wheelie control, rear wheel lift mitigation, up down quick shifter, which you can adjust its sensitivity. So yeah, all the rider mode adjustment you could want, but one of the trade-offs of having this old school analog looking instrument setup, the good thing is it looks like the old one did, so it's true to its roots, but we've only got a really small TFT screen to show all the riding data, and so we've got no smartphone connectivity or sat-nav or anything like that a lot of modern bikes, it's pretty commonplace in modern bikes now. I reckon most Hayabusa buyers wouldn't care less about that stuff because it's not really what the Hayabusa's about. We also don't have any electronic suspension, which I think that probably would have been a nice touch, though the suspension has been enhanced for 2022, as has the brakes. And actually, the brakes are really nice. For it to stop, you know, a 264 kilogram bike as well as it does is quite impressive. I really like the plantedness that you get on the Hayabusa. It feels like you're really stuck to the road. It's like a freight train coming through. I think the story of the Hayabusa is one of the great yarns of the motorcycling industry, you know. Is, for those who don't know, the Hayabusa was very intentionally built to steal the crown from Honda's Super Blackbird as the fastest production motorcycle, and that's why it's called the Hayabusa. The Hayabusa is Japanese for a bird called the peregrine falcon, which actually hunts and kills blackbirds. And the Hayabusa, when it came out in 1999, indeed dethroned the Blackbird as the fastest production bike, which I just think is so sick. Like, what a devastating burn to Honda. Yeah, this bike is really one for those who know what they're doing. If you're not quite a confident rider, you could get in some serious trouble on this thing. I mean, even if you are a confident rider, you could get into a lot of strife quite quick. You need to make your decisions really early because that weight isn't going anywhere. But I think the suspension package does really well on this new thing to manage that weight. And as I said, the brakes are really good actually. And I know people will probably call me a fairy for this, but I'm so stoked that it has good traction control now, because I rode the 2020 model in the rain last year, and oh my god, that thing was terrifying. You launch it in first gear and the rear wheel just lights up instantly. But on the dry it was fine, but yeah, in the wet with no traction control, it was so gnarly. But I like how you can have 10 levels of traction control, and it's cool because you can still slide, you can still power slide and wheelie and stuff like that, but you just got a little bit more of a safety net. What a beautiful part of the world, eh? Only happened upon this road. There's water in sections and leaves and stuff like that. Not exactly the Hayabusa's natural territory. So yeah, it's priced from a bit under $28,000 right away, which is, that's a premium price tag for sure. Hey look, there's Puff and Billy. Cool. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so pricing. This one costs just under $28,000 right away because it's got the pillion seat cover, which runs $299. I think that's reasonable-ish pricing, though it's certainly premium pricing, but I think given the reputation that the Hayabusa nameplate commands, I think it's reasonable, and I know that they've sold out their entire first Australian shipment, so obviously customers aren't minding that price tag. Here's the other thing. A lot of people were a little bit disappointed that this bike still has the same, fundamentally the same motor. I think people were talking about it being turbocharged and all this kind of speculation, but if Suzuki built the Hayabusa hero bike that rivals the Kawasaki H2R and whatnot, you know, the bike that they were all dreaming about, they wouldn't sell any and they wouldn't make $1 on it because it would cost too much to both produce, and for the consumer it would cost too much to buy. So I think that this update really just keeps the Hayabusa alive, and I'm so pleased for it because it's such a cool thing. And it's still a good road bike for sure. It's just not a hero weapon. I will will say this bike feels, you know, 10 years newer than the second generation bike. It still feels like you're on a Hayabusa, so much so, but just the level of refinement's gone up, you know, 10 gears. It's still sitting on that same old chassis, with tweaks of course, but you know, I think they've pushed that chassis, refined and refined and refined to about as far as you can go with that. I'd love to take it on some faster roads. I'll do that later this week, I think, because I have not been able to stretch its legs at all, and you really can't on the road, to be honest. It's too highly geared, it's too fast. But it's still a really fun thing to scoot around on. It's comfortable enough. It's a real sports bike stance, but the seat's quite large and comfortable. And also for this new model, they've brought the handlebars closer to the rider. So yeah, it feels a little bit more neutral in its riding position. Quick shift is really smooth too, and you can adjust how sensitive it is. I've just got it in the normal regular mode right now, but you can make it really racy. But for just around town, there's no need for it to be that abrupt. Jeez, there's just so much grunt under my right wrist at all times. It's incredible. I'm in third gear now, pulling out, and it's just, you can kid yourself into thinking it's easy to ride when you're going at slower speeds, but I've spent enough time on older Hayabusas to know that you come in too hot to a corner and all of a sudden things get so real. Just reality dawns on you. Whereas some bikes look after you. This one's a shark. It'll respect you if you respect it, but you know, take it for granted and it'll buck you right off. You know, this is what the Hayabusa's really good at. Racing people at the lights. There was like a Walkinshaw Commodore back there trying to go me, and it took every fibre of my being not to race him. I reckon you could take off from the lights that has a speed camera on it and be breaking the speed limit in the intersection enough to get a fine. That's how ridiculously quick they're making these bloody sports bikes nowadays. And it's sort of no wonder that so many people are becoming more and more attracted to middleweight bikes, like particularly middleweight naked bikes, because you can just get so much grunt out of middleweight engines now that, to a degree, these bigger grand touring weapons like a Hayabusa or a ZX14 or something seems, well, ridiculous. I don't think anyone would really dispute that. It is ridiculous power for the road, ridiculous speed, but sometimes you just need a little bit too much excitement in your life, and well, motorcycles like the Hayabusa deliver that in spades. So let us know what you think about the new Suzuki Hayabusa. Does it offer enough to rival some of the hot young guns on the market at the moment? If you enjoyed the video today, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. We've got a lot coming, so we really look forward to bringing you along.